Friday afternoon. You may have missed this. The Vikings firing their general manager, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, just 7 months after signing what the Vikings called a multi-year contract extension. Meanwhile, star receiver Justin Jefferson was on the Sports Seriously podcast and had some very interesting thoughts about his former quarterback, Sam Darnold.
Everyone knows the difficulty of the quarterback position this year, of how we was dealt it. But of course, having a quarterback that's already had the season under his belt with us, knew the plays, knew the playbook, knew the players, of course, throwing to me, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, all of these guys. I definitely felt like we would have done better.
Oh, pretty safe to say, right? It's a reasonable,
fair.
It's a reasonable assumption they would have done better. Here's the thing, Dominique. I have to be careful how much I criticize the Vikings for the decision that they made in order to not contradict myself. At the beginning of this season, I think it was after the first week when J.J. McCarthy won that first game against the Bears in the fourth quarter, I went on a talk show in Minneapolis and I said, if I was the general manager or the owner of the Vikings and I had Kevin O'Connell, I would never pay a quarterback big money. I would just assume that I could get whatever journeyman or whatever rookie was ready to step up next, and my coach is going to coach him up, and I would spend that money all sorts of other places. And from that exact moment forward, the Vikings spent the next 16 games proving me dead wrong. So someone has to criticize them for it, but Dominique, it can't be me.
Yeah, I think that they've kind of dropped the ball here. But the tough thing about it is I'm not sure that Sam Darnold would have been as good as it's turned out in Seattle, because for a large stretch of the season in Seattle, Sam Darnold wasn't good. Of course, he came up big in the playoffs and started the season incredibly well. I'm not sure that it would have been much better. I think the reason why they moved on from Kwesi is a lot more about the decisions that he's made, not just with the Sam Darnold one, but as far as Justin Jefferson is concerned, I think he's probably right. They're a little bit better, but I think they've cooked up in their mind that they might be the Seahawks if they would have kept Sam Darnold. I'm not sure that's 100% true. He still struggles.
I don't know. They won 14 games with him last year,
right.
with largely the same group, and I understand he struggled at the very end of last year as well. What do you think if you're Justin Jefferson right now?
Yeah, listen, I was on this set, myself and Rex. We were like, why in the hell you let Sam Darnold walk out the door? Because usually you don't let good quarterbacks walk out of your building. And we've seen what's going on with J.J. McCarthy. We don't know if he can't play. He just hasn't been available.
Right.
Like, we don't know where you are, what you are, because you're constantly in the ice tub. And so, to me, that's a concern. I don't think anything that Jefferson said was wrong. He was just being honest. Like, look, we had a guy in the building that was feeding me the ball, and he was a pretty doggone good quarterback in our system.
It's also important to note that Justin Jefferson stood up for and backed J.J. McCarthy multiple times throughout the season. So this is not a wide receiver complaining about. He's just given an honest analysis of the situation, which is a fair one, I think. Sam Darnold, they wanted J.J. McCarthy to be the starter. So when they were talking to Sam Darnold last offseason, it was about, we could have you back, but not at this level financially, and no guarantee that you're going to be the starter. So he took the better opportunity. Obviously a mistake by Minnesota, but that's hindsight.
It probably also isn't a coincidence, Dominique, that if on this day last year I'd asked you who's the best wide receiver in the NFL, you might have said Justin Jefferson, and today you might say Jackson Smith and Jigba, and the one thing they have in common is that Sam Darnold was their quarterback.
Fair. I take back all my Sam Darnold criticism. Best quarterback in the league? Top 5? What we thinking now? Sam Darnold's the man? Super Bowl MVP? NFL MVP next year. Sam Darnold is that good, and the Jets had him. They drafted him. They picked him.
You need to throw the Jets into this? All of a sudden, we were sitting here having a perfectly nice conversation, and all of a sudden you got to drop the Jets into the middle of this. We actually will talk.
Yeah, this according to our Adam Schefter. Seahawks offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak looks like he will be the Raiders' next head coach. This move cannot be official by rule until next week after the Super Bowl has been played. But if you're a Raiders fan, you're going to get a chance to see your next head coach coaching on the sidelines in the Super Bowl on Sunday, because it looks like it will be Clint Kubiak, the Seahawks offensive coordinator.
And D Wood, it does seem as though that takes the drama out of my next question and the next 3 months with the build-up to the NFL draft. If you were bringing in the coach whose specialty is developing the quarterback, right? He's the guy who was with Darnold this year, and he's one of that, right? He's from that tree, that same offense that all these guys run. Basically, all the same coaches who got hired in all the other jobs.
It's literally Gary Kubiak's son.
Gary Kubiak. Okay, fair enough. It's their offense. Is there any question does that solidify to you they're taking Fernando Mendoza?
Oh, absolutely. Literally, the whole Raiders organization was at the national championship game,
right,
just to watch Fernando Mendoza. And I think, they're not going to move off this pick. You got obviously Tom Brady being a minority owner, and obviously the greatest quarterback to ever play in the history of this game. This is like a lock for the Raiders to pick. Pick Fernando Mendoza as the number 1 pick in the draft.
Feels that way, obviously, Neek. And I've been one of those who has been asking aloud, and this obviously suggests that they've made their mind up, and I probably wouldn't have the guts to do it if I were sitting in their shoes. But when you're a team with as many glaring needs as they have, I think I could be at least tempted to trade away the first pick in the draft and trying to stockpile and rebuild and hope that Fernando Mendoza is someday talked about the way we talk about Herschel Walker. It doesn't seem like that's the direction this thing is going, Neek, but it is something I think I might be at least a little tempted to do if I were them.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a reasonable and interesting strategy. The problem is you're going to need to get a quarterback at some point. And when are you ever going to be more well-positioned to get a quarterback, a young, talented quarterback, than when you're number 1 overall? Like, hopefully you'll never be in this spot again. So I feel like I understand why you would use that pick for this, but it all depends on what you would get back. And I think what you would get back would not be enough. And we've seen that the way you can spend your money with the Patriots, if you get the quarterback, you can spend the money in the offseason, get a good coach, and turn that thing around. But what you can't, coach around is having nobody at that position. So they're going to have to use one of those picks that they trade to to eventually get a quarterback. So why not get him now?
I think when they talked to coaching candidates, the conversation was about Mendoza. Like, what do you think of Mendoza? You want to coach him? I think that's definitely the way they're going. And it's not just like the talent and the tools. Kid's a winner, and this is an organization that needs a dose of that.
Yes, to me, my question is not based on questioning Mendoza. It's based on questioning whether the franchise is in a position to start building around a quarterback. That said, next stop on the run the hurry up is the Cardinals. They're hiring Mike LaFleur as their head coach, and so that leads one to wonder, no matter who they hired, we would have been wondering, what does this mean for that man on our screen, Kyler Murray?
Yeah, Kyler Murray, he's got 1 year of guaranteed money left on his contract at about $39 million. If he's still on the Cardinals roster in the middle of March, the 2027 salary becomes guaranteed. So the Cardinals, assuming they're moving on from him, which all indications throughout the season were that they would, I would expect them to release him prior to that third day of the league year when that 2027 money kicks in. They would love to be able to trade him, but with that contract, I think it's going to be pretty difficult.
So what do you think, Neek? What does the future? Kyler Murray, number 1 pick in the draft. Obviously, the flashes of brilliance have been exciting to watch and spectacular, but there's been no consistency, and all of that. We all know what the issues are. What is your sense of Kyler Murray's future right now, Dominique?
Yeah, I still think he's incredibly talented. Of course, he's uniquely built to play quarterback, which isn't always good, but I think he's a guy that, in the right situation, could help out a lot. I really like the Vikings as a spot where they could get someone like Kyler Murray to take some of the pressure off of him. I don't think that the Cardinals have been a particularly well-run organization, and that's not to take responsibility away from Kyler. I think some of this has to do with him maturing as a player, which I think he will. And finding a new team, sometimes it's a wake-up call that players need to kind of fulfill their potential. So I think Kyler Murray's career is far from over, given his athleticism and arm strength. We just hope that he ends up in the right spot so he can fulfill his potential.
Well, look, I mean, there are a lot of teams out there that are in desperate need of a quarterback. I'll just use the Jets as an example because it's a team I know well and a team that you know well. If Kyler Murray is released and is just there, sitting there, do you think teams that need a quarterback will be clamoring to sign him? Will there be a bidding war for Kyler Murray, and should there be?
Kyler Murray's going to get another opportunity because he was a number 1 overall pick, and he's very talented. Teams can't resist themselves when it relates to these type of players like, let me bring them into my program. I'm going to be the guy that's going to fix it because the ego plays a big part in this whole deal. But, I think you brought up the Jets, I would rather have his teammate, Jacoby Brissett, if I was making a decision.
Well, Jacoby's signed for next year, too. I mean, that may be the way the Cardinals are thinking, right? In which case, you can't get him. But no, look, I think Kyler Murray will find a home. I think there's enough, to your point, Greeny, enough quarterback-needy teams that someone with that pedigree will at least take a chance. Maybe he's the guy Minnesota brings in to provide some level of competition for J.J. McCarthy. Yep. Maybe he's a guy that the Browns look at. They just hire a head coach in Todd Monken who's worked with a mobile quarterback, obviously, the last couple of years in Baltimore. So I do think there are plenty of places where he could land and get a shot, at the very least, to be the starter next year.
Is he a player, Dominique, because of his size and because of his somewhat unique skill set that you have to build an offense around? Like, he's not your normal plug-and-play, bring him in and compete for a job kind of quarterback. So that feels to me like it might limit the conversation a little bit, Nick.
Yeah, I think attacking the middle of the field from inside the pocket is obviously going to be a little bit more difficult for him to do, but he has the arm strength and accuracy, and then you put on top of it the unique athleticism that no one is necessarily quicker than him, and he's as fast as any quarterback in football, that you could make it easy for him. I think in a system, the Vikings keep coming to mind, in a system like that, you can find easy ways with Justin Jefferson for Kyler Murray to be effective. I think part of the problem is you ask so much of these young quarterbacks. Putting him in the right system where not as much is asked of him, I think you could see Kyler Murray really flourish. And he's always had a propensity to hold onto the ball. I think that's the hard thing, to break him of that habit, and maybe being in a system where he feels like he can trust the offensive system a little bit more will be the best place for him.